Good evening. Welcome to another edition of African Americans Ain't Africans, the Think Show that proves without a shadow of a doubt that the so called African American didn't find their way to America in the trunk of a ship. I'm your host, the Indigenous One. Last week we did a program about paper genocide, how through all the newspaper articles, news articles, documents that has been going around America since the 1600s, how they have constantly changed or try to change the identity of the indigenous people here. And got was met with a whole bunch of backlash. Had a brother come on talking about we were African. Couldn't explain nothing he said, but what I found disturbing about it is that many in the audience, not all, people in the audience was, let him talk. Let him, give him a chance. And I gave him a chance because I don't know no other platform other than this one that give people a chance to speak so we can hear what you got to say. But what I noticed, the cat wasn't saying nothing. And I'm sure many of you saw that. After this cat, we had a sister come on and just toe it up. Couldn't explain herself. Wasn't what we were talking about. Listen, the sign on the door says African Americans ain't Africans. Why you would come and talk about Africa, I don't know. Because you're going to get it straight. And because you don't know it, that's not our fault. Everybody learn as much as you can. But it was something that was disturbing about it because these people had an audience within the audience. And I'm like, what is that? Finally got the answer. And I knew it was there, but I never really thought about it until Lisa hit me with it. So, since it was her idea, I'm going to let her introduce her to it. Lisa, what's going on, love?
Kalito. How you doing? Thank you for having me. Hello to the chat, the best chat in the land, the most critical thinking chat in the universe. Thank you, chat, for being you. Um, man, so we were talking about it because we were trying to figure out like what does it come from? Why are people like very rude and just insistent and then like emotional and like sensitive at the same time, and then it sets off this like chain reaction where other people get like extremely sensitive and get in their feelings, and everybody's all like offended and it's just like all hyped. And then I was like, oh, how old are these people? And I'm thinking, well, they're in their 30s to 40s. And then I was like, oh, what we don't realize every day in our life is that, we all like seem to be the same and, doing the same, and we're working, doing what we got to do, taking care of business, taking care of family, whatever, taking care of ourselves. But some of us are actually crack babies. Now, I'm saying this to be a matter of fact that there are people that are have neurologically different, like they're going to be a more sensitized people. They're going to respond differently. They're going to have different ways of handling things because of whatever happened neurologically to them. And everything may be cool as far as like, yeah, they're coping, they doing and dealing and dipping and doing living their life. But the reality is that there are people that are going to respond differently. They're going to be highly sensitive. They're going to be easily offended. They're going to be very anxious. They're going to have these kind of symptoms and may not really know how to process certain things. So like it seems like everybody's everybody, but then there's going to be a huge portion of us out in the world who actually are going to be different. And that's why you got to understand when people are like way over the top or really dramatically doing things and you can't understand it, and they seem easily irritated, well, they seem get agitated quickly, or they seem to insist on having things their way or having a certain kind of control, that is a symptom of something bigger at hand. It's not just a coincidence. A lot of times, what you're looking at are people who are really affected by crack. They're crack babies, but they're adults. And so they have this whole like different kind of way of being and coping and doing. And so it may be different. And so if you kind of like process that with full understanding of like, okay, like, all right, so that's why they get agitated, or that's why they're like so, easily like that's why they're just like insistent, or they may just like be like, oh, like they gotta have it their way, or they gotta like feel us, they respond to things in a weird way that doesn't really jive with the situation. It doesn't make sense that you are this intense about something. It doesn't make sense that you're overreacting about something. If the things don't add up, and maybe the chemical imbalance that they haven't caused in themselves, okay, they're not responsible for how they're acting, but that might be why they are reacting the way they are reacting.
Another thing that I noticed about that whole, because when you brought that up, I was like, damn, I never even thought of it like that. But this is the other thing about that. And this is another thing, we get to that attitude that you talk about. We get aggressive, we get mad and all that. This is a problem that we brought on upon ourselves. All of the people we worship, all of the hip hop artists that we worship, all of them talk about that's what they did to make it big. All we do is worship these kind of people. We think they're the baddest people in the world. And that whole, if you weren't a baby in the 80s, if you were around in the 80s, you know what that epidemic did to the community. It set us back. And a lot of times as we're going forward, trying to figure this out, having to go through what we're going through, we don't like to stop to look to analyze to see if we're going the right way, if we're doing the right things. And so you see all of this madness going on in the community. It's a direct correlation to that. But we like to sweep it under the rug and act like it's not happening. We're going to have to deal with it, y'all.
Yeah, we have to take responsibility for what has happened.
Problems are strictly from cocaine exposure or a result of their early abuse. And that's been a problem for those who study drug-exposed infants as well.
Many of these women are also using marijuana. Okay, many of these women are also smoking heavily, and smoking, cigarette smoking seems to have effects worse than we initially thought. And then you have other women doing other street drugs like cocaine and heroin.
Veronica is now in a special education class at a local public school. Her parents hope in time she will catch up developmentally and grow up to live in a world that will no longer punish her.
I think adults need to get educated and need to figure out how to understand so that kids like V, and there are unfortunately, hundreds, thousands of these.
All things Brandy says, you know what else? Ritalin for ADHD. Do we know that long term, what that did long term? I understand if you're on Ritalin for more than a certain amount of years, they won't admit you. Okay, Lisa, you can go ahead. I just want to share that. You go ahead, hit play, Lisa.
They're called crack babies, babies drug exposed before birth from mothers addicted to cocaine. It's been estimated more than 400,000 of these babies were born nationwide in the past 5 years, most of them premature, most of them with serious medical problems. But very little has been done to track their development. Many doctors are beginning to believe that once the trauma of the birth is past, that most drug-exposed babies can catch up.
Oh, Ritalin is just as dangerous. Like Ritalin is bad. Most of these prescription drugs are worse, and even alcohol. They didn't mention that. They mentioned smoking, but alcohol, fetal alcohol syndrome, is extremely damaging. You know, and so we got all these things going on, and then you wonder, why people act the way they do. A lot of people act the way they do, and it's like they can't cope because of things that's happened to them before they were even born, or they have a strange way of responding because of the drugs that they've been given. Um, that's just terrible. A 6-year-old with zombie out on written. I mean, these drugs are very, 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 very strong. And a lot of these things are being given to our kids in lieu of just letting them be active, letting them play like they need to play, let them run around, run it off, be outside in the sun, be outside in the air. Can't come in until the lights, until it gets darker, until it starts to get, 6 o'clock or whatever. You have to stay out and play. Kids don't stay out and play. Kids are looking at their phones and their iPads and their different types of media stuff. So it's a whole different thing. And these kids, they need to move their bodies. That's a problem. And now we've got these folks that are adults, and they have a hard time coping. They have a hard time, knowing that, they're not really thinking of things clearly. They don't even see it in themselves, and they don't see it. They don't see that they are not actually computing things correctly. Okay. And then they want to get angry at everybody else. They want to be agitated. They want to be irritated, and when you see it, it's just like we need to recognize it for what it is. There are people that are walking around that have these issues, but if we don't understand what is behind it or what could potentially be behind the behavior, then we're not going to have a good fix on the situation. Okay. But we want to worship these people like New Jack City got to play out now. Now, why do we got to play for New Jack City? Didn't we have enough of New Jack City? That wasn't romantic. That time was not romantic. They want to make you think it's romantic because they want to get us on crack again. They want to get us on it again. Okay? That's how they want to destroy you. They want to destroy you by any means necessary. And if they can bring it back, they want to bring it back. But this is the thing. We can't be romanticizing the crack dealers. We can't romanticize the drug dealer. And that's what we do. That's our fault. That's our fault that we do that. That we want to romanticize the people that are destroying us, our own people destroying their own people, and we want to romanticize it. But why? But why are we doing that? That doesn't make any sense, and it's all our faults. We got to do better. You know, we romanticize the pimps in the 70s, romanticize the dead going drug dealers in the 90s, and we still are romanticizing it. And we got to cut that out. That has got to stop. Let's check this out for a real minute.
I'll give y'all some A1 audio today. I got my headphones on my beats. You know that microphone's crystal clear. Crystal clear. It's crystals. And they're clear. Yeah. Anyways, man. I got a story, man. It's alright, you know. It'll do. It'll hold you over until they step out of line. And when they step out of line, it's like I'll give y'all some A1 audio today.
Good afternoon, Mr. Dixon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
You waited a long time to see us today, haven't you?
Yes, ma'am.
One thing about me, man, I ain't never liked motherfuckers who sell crack, you know what I'm saying? All you doing is bringing your people down for what, a piece of change? So basically, you're a sellout. If you're a crack dealer, you're a sellout, bro. Fuck you.
So, how much damage, Lisa, do you think, not just from those babies born, but the babies that those babies had? Do you think that reaches down that far?
Even more so, the people that, that died, that were killed because of because of the wars and the competition on the streets, and the gangs that were initiated into different cities, that they didn't have gangs in New York. There were no gangs in New York prior to the 80s. Okay, there were no gangs were not a thing. So, it introduced a lot of things into areas that there weren't. Okay, little towns in Mississippi, Alabama, Virginia, Georgia, that didn't have all that stuff going on. It introduced it to our community. And you got to understand, they want you to be romanced by it, finessed by it. They want you to think that the money is attractive, that it's sexy. And they introduce it to our young people. Oh, yeah. Welcome to the show.
Welcome
Hello.
to the show. Welcome to the show, like Indian.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, lovely. First of all, I'm called Little Indian Hummingbird. I'm a Jamaican, but I just wanted to say two things and to make a request. One, thank you so much for sharing your content. Your content means so much to a lot of us who are operating in what I would call post-war occupation, where our identity is so obscured, and if it's not for connecting with our elders, we don't really have any clue as to who we are. I want to encourage everybody to talk to their elders. Don't take it for granted that they are here now. Don't wait until they are gone to give them their flowers. Be active in their lives. Listen to their stories. Ask them questions, and you will find out who you are. Um, the second thing I wanted to say is I'm just now finding out that there are so many Virginia Indians in Jamaica. I had no idea. It's not taught in our history. It's information I found out along the way. And the thing that confirmed it for me is the phrases that my mom would say to me that her great grand aunt, which would be my great great grand aunt, would say, and these were Choctaw or Shatta phrases, and they are only known in some areas in Jamaica, in Saint Elizabeth in particular. And my request is, if you have any information about what took place as it relates to Jamaica, the American Indians that were exiled to Jamaica, if there are any books that you know of that could shed light on this information, I would greatly appreciate it.
There's a teacher down in Jamaica's teaching about the Jamaican Indians. I ran across him about 5 years ago, and he just gives it to you straight. We act like this part of the world, like the people weren't traveling back and forth, seeing each other, and all this stuff, and that was definitely happening. So there's people in Jamaica, they're teaching it. They on top of game. All you have to do, whatever I would say, ask the students in Jamaica, because I think the brother down there is teaching it. He's teaching it at one of the universities in Jamaica. He teaches about the Indians of Jamaica. I don't
Other
even know
thing,
It
his name.
teaches about the
the other
Taino,
I'm
hour,
sorry.
the Taino, and so he teaches about the Taino and the Arawaks. But I wanted to know
the
some
Caribs.
yes, and the Caribs and so on. But I wanted to know more in particular about like the different waves of American Indians that came here. Because some of the readings I've come across says the Pequots came here, and then if you look at, okay, so I don't know much about American history. I'm only
Right.
recently getting into it, and I'm realizing that in 1831 there was the Nat Turner Rebellion, and that Nat Turner was a Baptist preacher. But one of our national heroes in Jamaica is Samuel Sharp, and his rebellion, he was also a Baptist preacher, and his rebellion was also in 1831. And I'm realizing that not only does Samuel Sharp look like my grand aunt, but you don't have a lot of people who look like him. And it's something that's not taught. Like, we in Jamaica are not taught about the connection between the American Revolution or the Virginia Indian Wars and the people in Jamaica. Like, it's not taught in the general population.
Well, trust and believe, Virginia is like they are the worst at trying to hide everything and lying about everything. But yeah, I actually was looking at that too. The coincidence of the same year and the same, kind of mystique about these Indians. Because Nat Turner, you might not be aware, but I don't call that. I call it the Indian War. Okay, I call the Nat Turner not an uprising, but the Indian War. And I feel like that it was actually a big Indian war. I think we were warring. See, I think the truth is we didn't stop warring from 1812 on. We were from the Tuscarora Wars to the 18th. We continuously was warring these people, right? We were warring continuously. It was a big thing. And but to shut it down, historically they tell the tale and they mistell it, right? They mistell the tale. Oh, it was just Nat Turner, that's it. You know what I mean? But no, we was continuously warring, and we were in communication because I have, family that I can tell you have gone to Barbados, traveled back, going to Trinidad. I have the records of the travel that the people were traveling back and forth to the islands. And so, yes, a lot of Virginia Indians were traveling to numerous islands, and so that happened. And an entire tribe in Virginia was actually removed and placed to what was it? What was the island they were sent to? Where your mom goes, Carrie. Carrie. I don't know where you.
Your mic is muted,
You're talking
Carrie.
about Anguilla? No.
Yeah, no, it wasn't Anguilla. It wasn't
Yeah.
Anguilla. But anyway, I can't remember. But they took a whole tribe was like removed and sent to an island. So, and that happened a lot of times because every time they warred with us, and like I said, we were warring continuously. I don't believe that there really was a stoppage. They try to make it seem, they minimize it, but that's a lot of us was, when they warred with us, they took us as prisoners and they would bring us to the islands. So a lot of the Indians that was warring from 18 whatever 100 on, because when we realized after we've helped them bring all these Europeans in with the war, the so-called War of Independence, which was their takeover, it was a European takeover. With that European takeover, we were hoodwinked. And when we realized that, the war was on. After they started acquiring and working with the European people that they was working with and taking over more and more of the country after the Louisiana Purchase. Oh yeah, in 1810 we saw what was going on. We were fighting from that time forward. So yeah, there's a lot of that, and just like you don't know, we that's why it took us a while to really get ourselves into a knowing. But when they worked with the smaller islands, they could do a more thorough job of convincing you of things because they had a smaller population to work with, like with Hawaii. They could just take over and just you know make and mix them up and do all kinds of things. But fortunately that they didn't do a whole mix up in Jamaica and some of the other islands like they did with Hawaii, where they brought in all these white Europeans and Polynesians, or no, and Asians and all different other people to daggone dilute their identity. That was just foul. They did some foul things there. But yeah, I mean, I think the information is there. It's just so hard. There's some information about court records, because I don't know if I read that, but I may not have, and maybe I'll do a build where I'll read it. But there's some information in the Virginia court records about Jamaica and some things that happened in Jamaica. Jamaica's coming to Virginia, as a matter of fact. So yeah, and yeah, so kind of punishment,
Please.
some kind of
And
murdered them. I don't know if they hung them. Something happened, but I'll have to go back and look into my court minutes and stuff. But yeah, there was definitely mention of that in the court records.
so please, any chance you get, please share the information. I am looking out for that build. It would be greatly appreciated. It's very political here. I do not think that if I am to share this information with the Jamaican populace, that one, it would be well received, because that isn't even a priority for a lot of people. They don't realize what has happened in terms of politics and how they have separated us from the land, because a lot of people went in droves to Kingston, which is like the metropolis here, and left acres upon acres of land in the country, and they would do well with those lands now because things are shifting. Not only is it that jobs are hard to come by, but people could subsist on farming. You would be
Right.
able to at least provide for your family. But now you have a whole, it's a huge demographic of the nation that lives in poverty, and it becomes a generational thing, because you have young people having children at ages 14, 16, and by the time their child gets to that age, they're having children again. So the cycle of poverty, it is cyclical, and it can be depressing. I mean, how do you even help people? Because at that point, their only concern is the next meal, living hand to mouth. And the
Right.
politicians use this. When politicians come in and offer them goats, for example, you can maybe start a little farming. You get a male and a female. They don't want it. They prefer to take a few $1,000s, and that's gone. Not even a day, and it's gone because the economy is so bad now, and it's getting worse, and they're in the same position. So it's important, and I don't know what I'm supposed to do per se, but I can do the little that I can do, but I
Well,
also have to
obviously,
be
you're supposed to
wise.
do something because you sound very compelled, and that's really good. But I would tell you not to be discouraged and think that it's going to fall on deaf ears, because if one or two people pick up on what you're saying, that's one or two people that weren't there before. And I would encourage you to speak up and speak out because a lot of the young people, everybody's got to, pick up the baton and move forward, because yeah, they're gonna shut you down. And truth be told, like, although people come to the United States and they think, oh yeah, this is great, great, they got it good, but our own people, my people in Virginia, are in abject poverty. I have people in abject poverty in Virginia, where I'm from. People are not doing well. People are downtrodden. People are suffering. They're pushing drugs in these little rural communities. People don't have the skills they used to have. They can't even get to the water to fish. It's crazy. You live on a peninsula, but you can't even fish. Things like that are happening everywhere where you think that we got it going on. We don't have it going on. We just, like you said, move to the metropolis and leave our country areas, our homelands alone. And then it's taken over by wealthy, greedy people, and our poor relatives are there, left there suffering, and being undereducated and have no opportunity, no good jobs. That exists here as well. And everywhere I bet there's everyone in the chat has people that are in that condition, no matter what state they're from, that exists. So this whole colonizers mythology of doing this to our people, it's a global thing. It's a global thing, but it's mostly being done to us in the Americas. To me, it's the worst for us. And so we have to keep fighting. Don't be discouraged, because guess what? The win is there. The win is in the truth. We're going to win because people have a knowledge now that they didn't have. Because you're sitting up in here and you came up and you started talking about your Jamaican history and you're being indigenous Indian, and the fact that you acknowledge this and you want more, you're thirsty to know more about it. That is a win. They cannot roll it back. They can't erase it. Once it is established, you can't turn back. And so they have lost ground like they have never lost ground in the past. And we are winning like we'll never win. We've never won before. But we have to keep going forward. Never be discouraged. Keep going. Keep fighting, because the truth will always win. When we just have to make sure that we don't get confused by the lies and people trying to make us into something. Oh, call you a maroon or make you into something. Be focused on your indigenous past and on finding those records, and whatever, do contact me. You can contact me at acamac.org, and I will, if I have copies of I can definitely make copies of the records if what I did find in the court records about Jamaicans in Virginia, and I can share that with you, and whatever else I run across, because I do have a lot of very old books, and I can share that with you. I gladly will share it.
That would be greatly appreciated. And I just want to say, if there's any Jamaican, or if you guys in the comments know anybody who's a Jamaican who's a little bit confused, or tell them to talk to their elders, because it was only recently that I found out that my great granddad, they had like a sugar cane. It wasn't a plantation, it was a farm. So they would, and this is back in the 1800s when you look at it. So it's him, his son, which would be my granduncle's father, and also my granduncle. So those three men, they had land, acres, and they grew their own sugar cane, they milled their own sugar cane, and they sold their own sugar. And they had corn also. So I asked my granduncle, he died last year. I was so happy to have had the opportunity to speak with him, because I didn't grow up in that community. And he told me that, I asked him, so how is it that you guys were selling sugar when there's a plantation close by? And he said that um, the people did not want to buy the sugar from the plantation, because they used to call it coolie foot sugar, which is the Dravidians, the people from the place they now call India, East Indians. We used to walk barefoot in the sugar. So people didn't want coolie foot sugar. So they would buy his sugar, which wasn't fully processed. It wasn't fully dry. It's what they would call wet sugar. But people would buy it because they preferred that. So it's telling you that our people even though we are Indians, we were not those Indians. And even though we are Indians, we're not those people who they are now calling Indians today. And the first uh coat of arms of Jamaica, it did not say out of many one people. It was in Latin, and it said something about one Indian serving another. Indus something something something, but they
There
can
you
look
go.
it up.
Right.
So and it wasn't always these Polynesian looking people on the coat of arms either. It was the Virginia Indian looking people, those very melanated people with short hair and a feather crown and the feather skirt. So they should search for that information because it is there. They are lying about who we are. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak to your audience, and I'm just going to jump down. Thank you.
Thank you for being on. Thank you for that. That was good. I mean, I think that, and I have a friend. I just went to our. I was just was a week last weekend. I went to her mother's 80th birthday, and they were celebrating her from Jamaica to Canada. And whenever I talk to her family or to her people about it, they are very much aware of the fact that they are not, from Africa, that they are Indians, and that they are, indigenous to America and Jamaica. So that's there are other people out there that actually share your belief. Even my friend who was raised in, her mom was raised in Jamaica. She's raised in Canada, so I call her a Kajakan, a Canadian Jamaican. But even a lot of people, even if they're in Canada, no matter where they happen to have reside right now, they are becoming aware of the fact that they are not African. I mean, especially, because, she and I are nurses, so we work with a lot of Africans. So when you actually, are around that culture that they say you are able to actually stand shoulder to shoulder and feel the differences that we're just so far apart. It doesn't resonate that these are your people. It just doesn't. And I think that, that's the thing. A lot of people are in denial of that. They want it to be, so therefore they get fixated, and they're blind to the difference, and the energy and the culture, the spirit, everything is different. So I mean, and then when you're of the same people, there's a different energy. Now, we know that Jamaica's a little different, but we always feel comfortable around each other. We're off what we always, Americas, we always feel a kinship. We're more likely to get together. You could work with a lot of people will work with Africans and never get, even if you're of a different tribe. It's very tribal. So even if you are in Ghana and you're of a different people than another people, they may not mix, man. You on a different level. Like, y'all ain't gonna mix. So that's not a given, let alone having them actually mix with Indians. So all this idea of Africans mixing with American Indians is so crazy, because it doesn't happen like that. It does not happen like that now, and it wouldn't happen like that in the past. The fact that they want to make believe that melanated is African and that's it, that is just that needs to end. And it's so ridiculous that you have academics that actually push this kind of stuff. It is a sad thing. And so, but don't worry, because the academics hear us, and they are trying to respond to the fact that we are talking about things about being Indian, and now they have to adjust their talking point. So they're trying to back away from African studies. And a lot of these African studies people are going to be out of work, because even Yale, I was looking today, and Yale has coined the term black indigeneity. Black
No,
indigeneity.
black indigeny, whatever.
Indigeny, yeah. So I'm like, so that's what they're gonna change the daggone African studies to? What are they doing? Like, they're gearing up, because they see the wave. They see that whole out of Africa thing. People are not going for it. It doesn't make any sense, and it's contrived. And so they've done this whole video where they go into lengths about talking about Native Americans, and they use that terminology, and blacks, or I think they're using the term blacks. They use African Americans interchangeably, and then they make some statements as to say that the Indians were called Negroes, and then they back away from it and try to make them into two separate different things and make the Negroes into Africans. So they're all over the place with it, but they're trying to they're trying to control or at least try to be somewhere in the narrative of what is actually being spoken out in these streets. So be on the lookout for this new phraseology that they keep coming out with every day. Maroons, Black, Indigenous, all this stuff to try to put us into a category because they don't. Hey Jay, thank you. Jay in the. Did you get him? Oh, I'll get him in there. Oh, I tried to. Why can't I add Jay?
He's in there. He was in there.
But I tried to add him to the stream. Is he in? He's not.
He's in. Hey,
Okay.
Jay, what's going on? Jay, you there?
Oh,
Yeah,
now he's.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
You can hear me. I'm gonna stand by while Lisa's talking, and then I'll speak.
Oh, I'm done, Jay. Go ahead.
Um, as you were talking, I told Carrie I didn't mention it in the last broadcast when I was on. I was I was talking to a former coworker, and he told me he came across an African. I don't know what country he's from, and he told me that this African couldn't find a place where to get the COVID shot. So he had told him that he had come to America to get it because Gates and company are banned from coming to certain areas of Africa and India. So I don't know if you know about this, but I thought it was significant to mention that because you remember in 2020 how they were hyping it in America. They boosted so far up to get people so scared and worried that they went out and got it. And if you remember Bill and Melinda Gates, what they said, who they really wanted to take the regiment first, they were very explicit in that. So here in America, it was very obvious who they really were targeting. So I thought it was significant to bring that up to you.
Cool. Well, thank you, Jay. Um, one of the things the sister who just left, the sister from Jamaica that just spoke, I think when we hear these stories, about history and stuff, you have to remember West Indies. West Indies, that's down Jamaica in the Caribbean. What do the people look like and what do you think they all look like? They're on islands. The sun is beaming on them every day. They live in some of the best land ever. Those are the Indians down there. And I think a lot of times when we talk about them, when we hear these stories and all these stories of history, what is the environment where people come from? You got to keep that in mind. What's the environment of the Caribbean? The sun is shining on you every day, hard. Everybody have heard of West Indians. They're talking about all of America, North, South, Central, Caribbean, all of that. So
Yeah,
it'll
can I
be
just
it'll
add
be
something?
wise. It'll be wise if we keep that in mind when thinking about ourselves. You're connected to this environment over here. You get everything from this environment over here. You're the people who this environment created. You can't be confused about that no more. No more.
Let me.
You're breaking up, Lisa.
like Hummingbird was saying, and how she was, how she's being led by the elders, and we all need to, we need to catch them. We got to catch them because they're going, they hanging in there for us, but we're losing them, and because it's just a matter of time. So we got to get and connect with them as much as we can, and gather up their wisdom, collect it. But the reality, like she said, it's amazing that she is making these connections. It's important, and yes, we need to reach out and help our brothers and sisters in Jamaica, kind of make their connections so they can do their thing too. We all need to be doing this at the same time. I just saw a text from one of the Accomack brothers. He's been slow to kind of get going, right? But the funny thing is, a brother who came as a spy, because people come as interlopers. I don't know. That's what happens when you get organized. People will come to just be like spy and to kind of signify about what you're doing. Because he was educated in the HBCUs and a part of all this all this stuff, fraternal stuff. And so in his mindset, I probably was some kind of weirdo doing whatever Indian stuff that probably didn't make any sense. But you could see when he attended the summits that his mind was being like changed as he started to listen and learn from the stuff that we were talking about. And like when he got to walk around on our indigenous land and see the waterfronts and see the just and see the graves and the and be in the woods with us and walk around. I mean, you could see his eyes start to light up. You could see that it was like he was actually, I mean, I don't know any way to put it. It's like he was like having an outer body almost experience with this, with enlightening that he was feeling, experiencing with his identity, right? So come to find out that he actually grew up with another one of our Accomack people that they didn't know that they were both at all connected to the same homeland, let alone the same Indians. They went to the same private school. They lived in the same areas. They knew each other all the way through adulthood and did not know that they had this connection where their families migrated to the same place area in New Jersey and set each one to the same private school, and they have this connection. And then more recently, he just texted me and said that they ran into each other at the airport. And they said the ancestors must be trying to get us together. I said, yeah, they trying to show you that you're supposed to be moving. You're supposed to be activated. You're supposed to be doing what you need to do. You have gifts that you need to be utilizing for your people. And that's why y'all ran each other at the airport. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, this is crazy. One of them ran into daggone Carrie at a restaurant. You see, these things. This is how the answers are very, very active now. They are very, very active. They can make things happen and they will make things happen for you. You just got to listen to the conviction in your heart. So, yeah, she came on to talk about it because she was meant to talk about that. She is feeling like she needs to know more about her people because she's meant to know more about her people. And that's the way it happens. You are tapped on the shoulder and you just need to obey. Just obey and everything will flow. Everything will flow. And yeah, the ancestors are connecting us up. They're giving us the information we need. They're making things possible. And there's nothing that can deter it. It's happening. It's in action. And they don't really know it like they need to know it. But it don't matter whether they know it or not because it's happening. I close my mic.
And keep in mind too, all of us sooner or later are going to be in with those ancestors. So keep getting that information from them because they're not going to lead you in the wrong direction. Jay Smith, you had something else?
I have to remember it again.
Okay. So what we were talking about earlier before is these babies that were born in the 80s. Now there's a significant number of them in the community, and we can't avoid it and act like it's not there because it's there. I mean, if with the takeover of this social media, you know how we're portrayed on social media, way worse than the mainstream media.
But
And
again,
go ahead.
but we do that to ourselves as well. We put ourselves out there looking
Right,
crazy. You know what I mean? And you know
right,
what? We used to have we're way more conservative than our colonizers, right? As a culture, we're very conservative, and we have a sophistication about ourselves, and we have a modesty about ourselves that is inherent in us as the Indians that we are. And so we need to also roll back to that. That's natural, you know. It's the media that's telling these kids, oh, you can be a them or do a they, or it's the media that's giving our kids this wide playground of morals. It's not even natural to the children. Really, it's not. The kids need and want to have barriers. They want you to have they want to have guidelines. We as a people, that's why we tend to be so attracted to religion, because we seek to be in a environment that has some guidelines for us. We seek to be the best versions of ourselves. That's how we are as a people. That's our nature. We want to do what's right. We want to do what's best. And so that's why we get so attracted to these daggone shiesty religions, because in our efforts to be the best people that we are, which is in our nature, we believe that these organizations are going to give us that structure, but they're just out for money, and they're out to manipulate and control and divide us. They're not really there to give us the sustenance that we are really seeking. And that sustenance used to be in our nations. But that's why we have to build back better. We got to recreate what used to be there from our elders and from our communities, which are our families, our nations. So we have to build back that sense of that whole thing of we have standards, and we have certain daggone ways of doing things, and we have our own spirituality, and we have our faith that we follow. See, we have to build that back better, but it's in us. It's in us to do that, and everyone has a role to play in building and the reconstruction of our people and our nations.
A lot of inner work is necessary too. That's the most important, because you can't do anything that's going to prosper if you're not working on a deeper level on yourself. And I see that that's the most important in these times, especially because we're entering into a different age, and a lot of the influences that stir up things in our world. It's interesting you mentioned war, um, Lisa, because all the things that this broadcast is about, they were actually war measures. The United States is always in a constant state of war. Um, Even the police departments, they're really military, but they call it by a different name. A lot of people would have to agree when you consider it has a ranking system identical to the military. They call by the same name, by a different name, just to house and quarter them next to you. They get around that. But the use of substances that we're describing, um, the drug culture, is definitely a war measure. COVID-19 was a war measure. Operation Warp Speed, doesn't that sound military to you? It is. But a lot of people don't see it because they live in fear and they follow the false narrative that this is about your health. It's not about your health. Never was. Matter of fact, I think you already know, about the medical establishment who messed that up in the 1950s. So, um, I kind of wonder. You're gonna have to refresh my memory. When did the crack epidemic really get its boost or start? Because I'm trying to remember the timelines. It was in the 80s, mid
In the
80s, or
80s, yeah, starting in the 80s, it was really peaking in the 90s with the problems.
right?
Mhm.
Okay. I remember in the 70s growing up in New York City. I remember times where um, riding the New York City subway system, I used to see the heroin addicts. I remember them.
Mhm.
I also remember Vietnam vets coming back, and sometimes I would see some with their legs missing.
Mhm.
I used to see that. I recall. Now they got what they call prosthetics. Now you can't even see from the various
Yeah, yeah,
wards.
really good prosthetics.
Right. So
Mhm.
always a constant state of war. Always in despair. Oh, here's what I really wanted to say. We need to stop calling ourselves rebels or being in rebellion or participating in rebellion. The forces of evil are always in rebellion. So we need to at least be firm on knowing the difference.
Well, we don't even need to be that because we're not. We don't have to. It almost that it almost sounds like you're subjugated if you're doing something like that. We're not really subjugated. What we were was we were just misinformed. Really, we were miseducated, but we're not subjugated. We always are succeeding, rising above, painting outside the lines. We always thrive, but at this time that we are in a full knowledge of things, or are coming to be in full knowledge of things, this is when we actually can really rise to the level that we're supposed to be. And what we're really doing is, like I said, we're repatriating, and we are going to resolve and get restoration of what we've lost. That's all it is. And there's nothing more that needs to be done than that. And there's nothing complicated about the process. The process is just to let the truth out, which they are very desperately trying to hide. The more the people that know the truth, the more people that are actually aware of it, the more we actually know the truth of who we are. Like, we have know who our ancestors are. We know who we are as a people. We know what nations or names we come from. We start learning the language of our people. That's when things are really going to take action and take hold. So that's the name of this game. We don't have to be anything other than the people that we are, repatriate the people that we are. We don't have to do anything more than learn about our own genealogy, talk to our elders, get to know the truth about our own history, get to know more about our own homeland, get to know more about our own plants and animals and trees, get to know more about the nature that we used to be so familiar with: plants, wildlife, animal life, everything, bugs, everything, the natural herbs. We need to be more familiar and connect with our actual history and who we are as a people. And the knowledge of this is going to empower us to retain and restore what we have been what has been taken from us. That's it. And there's no more powerful thing that you can be on the planet than the actual original people that you are. There is nothing else. They could throw any other name at you that sounds cute. ADOS. They can call you FBA. They can call you Maroon. They can call you Octoroon. They can call you a Martian. They can call you whatever. But none of that can replace the actual name of your actual people. That's what's going to make the ancestors happy, and it makes them happy for you to even read their names. to actually research them and say their names out loud. Oh, that's Sally. Okay, Sally. This is making them happy. This is how they're able to help you by you acknowledging them, and then they give you downloads of information of what you need to be doing. They'll give you downloads of information, and you're like, how did I think of that? I don't even know, because that it ain't even you. It's God and your ancestors working in unison to move you forward.
It's like we brought up before. Sometimes you just have to listen. And that's one of the things that, ever since we ran to the cities and got out of nature, we stopped listening. So if you listen to a lot of people who watch a lot of TV, the TV is always blaring. We got to listen to what we think we can't hear. We got to listen. So when you go back and you start reading these indigenous stories, what you'll find out is when these people are coming over and they're explaining the indigenous women, one of the things that they all say is that the women had beautiful voices. When they spoke, it was like they were singing. This was all the women. They were able to communicate like that is because they listened, not listen to nobody in particular, just listen to the environment they were in. The earth makes sounds. We have to stop and listen to them and stop thinking that we just know everything, because we don't. I know I don't. We have to listen to what's being said to us. And like Lisa brought up earlier, those ancestors, those spirits are still right here in our midst. We can't listen to them. And that's why stuff like crack, this ADHD stuff, because to cut off from you listening, listen to yourself. And that's one of the things I noticed that we're missing. We don't listen to nothing. So I think that's something we're going to have to hone into big time. Listening. Even if you don't like what's being said, listen. A 4-letter sentence might change your life. Jay, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I couldn't, for some reason, I had a hard time switching between the chat and coming back on. I got disconnected. I kind of want to add to what you're addressing too. Another thing you have to put into the equation is CPS, Child Protective Services. That's a front for child trafficking. I'm sure you're aware of that. That's a serious
Yes.
problem because what they do is they do anything with those children, and some they may even put them under some sort of programming and reinsert them into the communities, and they're the ones that are, you know, influencing um, and destroying the communities from within. Another war measure.
I believe that for sure, Jay, because that happened in real life with my sister. Because she's, worked for the state for her very long career, and then she was a volunteer with the court system, taking kids in for like weekends and things. But she actually had a foster child for a moment. She had you know, several, but the one she had a girl, only 8 years old, um, and this girl um, would say things like, "I'm more powerful. I'm the." She actually came. She actually had a history. She was a Negro, indigenous child, but she was in white homes mostly, it seems like. And she would say things that were like kind of demonic about how powerful, or things she would be able to do, or things she could do. And then as it turns out, my sister woke up one morning and her entire place smell was filled with gas. This little girl, this little 8-year-old, had turned on the gas on the stove, opened up my sister's room door, shut her room door, stuffed things, stuffed things in her room door, opened up her bedroom window so she would have fresh air in her bedroom window, and made sure the gas went into my sister's room. It would knock you out the amount of gas my sister woke up to, right? And she was like, she got that girl out of there that same day. Like, she took her to the emergency room and got her gone. But you see, you just don't know what. You're right. I believe that she was being programmed. She was still in communication with her prior foster family. And, you just don't know what these people are being sent into the community to do. They kill you, do whatever. So that's the thing. So yeah, I believe that these children are being evil things are being done to these children, and these children are being turned into evil vessels, to be reinserted in our community and wreak havoc. The same way they did when they took us, our Indian children, from the time of John Smith and daggone Christopher or whatever. The fact that they would take our young children, bring them back to their European whatever, do whatever they do to them, pollute them, make them into spies and murderers, and then send them back to America, to the Americas, to come amongst us and wreak havoc to us. That happened. That happened over and over again, right? So the same thing is being done, I believe. Close my
You
mic.
know, you know that island. It's referred to as the Andaman Islands in the Indian Ocean. They call it North Sentinelese Island. You heard of it?
No, I haven't. Tell me about it.
Yeah, North Sentinelese Island is that location. This is probably ring a bell. That's the location where this supposed missionary went to that island thinking that he's gonna win those people to Christ.
Oh,
And
yeah, 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 yeah.
they shot him up full of holes because see, even the Indian government says that that island's off limits because those people they will defend that island. If you get shipwrecked, you're screwed if you think you're gonna make it to that island because they will try to kill you. Now, some people might be thinking that they're hostile for nothing, but they don't realize I read up on that island. There were some, I guess, British explorers, I don't remember the year, but they came to that island. They made contact with them, but they did exactly what you're describing. They took some of them. So they're not like that for nothing. They have a reason to be that way. So I just thought I would bring that to your attention because this activity of abducting children, never mind extraterrestrial and all that stuff about, abductions relating to that. There are people doing that shit too. So, and the biggest front is these child protective services. They're really fronts for that, for trafficking. And then the prison systems for human trafficking. So I can add to it even more with that. Anyway, I'll end with that.
You can roll. Go ahead and keep rolling.
Yeah, I'm pretty good with that. That's all I wanted to say. But I appreciate what you're presenting. These are issues. These are valid issues, and they need to be brought to the forefront. And people really have to actually become at least more aware and try to steer your way away from too many distractions. Do the inner work on yourself, and don't try to get caught up because see, from what I heard from warnings from other sources. There's going to be situations where you're probably not going to want to be around certain uh, amounts of people because they're going to start acting out. and you don't want to bring your frequency down in such situations like that. Uh, yes, it's true. Damage has been done to people. There are people suffering from trauma, whether it be by way of from the time they're childhood stages, developmental stages, or through war and whatever other means. Um, it's going to be very difficult for people that has had, you know, suffered from such situations. Not that it's it's not undoable, but it takes a lot in order for a person that's been subjected to certain types of rigid controls. Mind control, even though it's basically information control in its most um, simple form, the rigid control of mind control involves ritualistic abuse from childhood and mind programming to turn that young individual into a literal monster, literally. Those projects are real. They do exist. From what I understand, they're within the populations, you have a huge number of people that's had that kind of programming. And I didn't think it was possible. I think I might have mentioned it in one of Kerry's broadcasts before. They could literally cause a being to actually walk around, in essence, like a soulless being, literally. Because the soul moves to a higher resonance once they go through that ritual, and it's almost like they don't have access to it. So what the soul does, it records the events as the person's actually doing them. So these types of beings are good. They're trained to be good perpetrators. They could merge within your community, and you would never suspect it up front by looking at them. It would take time for you to recognize it, unless you could see energies, and then you would pick up on it right away. But yeah, they're walking around, they're doing all kinds of stuff, and you gotta be aware of that. Okay.
But you can be aware of it, but you can tell by the things they do where they're coming from, though, right?
Yeah,
By their actions.
you have to have at least some history, depending on where you are, to be able to tell that you're dealing with someone that's, had issues going on that may relate to that. But you see them in like celebrities mainly. You'll see certain activities that they engage in, but you'd have to like be in like outside the mainstream to know about it. You wouldn't know about just watching, let's say, a movie star. They're acting. You don't know
Right.
who they are in their private life. You're thinking what you're seeing publicly in TV shows and movies, that's them. You remember Beyonce? She once even said that when she's up there entertaining, it's not her. She gave reference to some entity that drives her performance.
And so everybody loves that, though, right?
Yeah, that's the way we think that's cool. But yeah, I mean, also, I think it's just important that we just sharpen our ability to discern. We we kind of have this thing, um, this attention deficit where we just like we can only look at something for a few minutes. Um, we can't really pay attention. We got to pay attention. Discernment is important. And so we have to discern and be discerning and look at these people and feel, not just look, but feel the energy. You have to feel the energy that they're giving off. And also think about what you are hearing and what people are saying and why. And that's all important. So actually yes, Sasha Fierce. But actually exercising your ability to discern the energy, discern the vibe, discern the person, and not just be, mystified by either how good they sound or how good they look or what they're saying or whatever, cadence they're speaking in. Because all these things can hypnotize you. Like a person's ability to talk in a certain cadence, it's almost like a rhythm, a rhyme to that, and it can be mesmerizing. So you all don't let yourself, we also have to be aware of that, but we also have to teach our young people to be safe in an unsafe world, with kids that are manipulating them. They got kids in school, trying to get your kid to be a homosexual with them. They got kids in school molesting same-sex people. They got all kinds of things going on. People making your children confused. You got adults giving kids things to try to get them to do stuff. And then some of these people, and then we have to be very protective of our people, our children, our families. We cannot give them access to our young folk. And yes, we do have to care for our elderly. We have to care for our young people. We need to be taking our kids in. If we need to grab up somebody's kids because they're a problem, we need to be willing to do that. It all starts in your mind. You got to be like, well, would I be willing if something happened? I know my cousin was having some problems. Would I be willing to deal with them if I needed to? But and then fortunately, people do the right things in your family, and they bring their people in. I know my cousins, great grandchildren, children, grandchildren, they were having problems, and they were able to step in and do what they needed to do. Pull it together along with a sister, and everybody pitches in and takes care of one another. That's the kind of things we need to be for each other. I know my son-in-law's mother, she took in her brother's child. They were out her brother was out in the streets. Her mother was just having babies like popcorn. And and so she took in these children, her cousins, another of her like stepfather's children, son's children. She took another one of those and adopted them. See, we need to, we need to be reaching out like that. We can make a difference. Yeah, public school is problematic because they are definitely trying to dumb us down on so many levels. You can't even function from the information that they're giving out in these schools. These people are becoming non-functioning beings, and that's a fact. Like, that's frightening, because in a world that's so, the technology is starting to grow, we can't have people that are just like completely useless. But these children are brilliant. So the fact that they're being rendered useless is an atrocity, because y'all know these babies are being born like Einstein. Not even Einstein. I don't want to say Einstein because I don't give him that credit. But, seriously, these kids are geniuses. Okay, they are genius children, and they need to be stimulated. And a lot of times what they say is misbehaving is really boredom. And that's a fact. These kids need a lot of information. They need it delivered to them in a certain way that's not dry or drab, because we don't like dry, drab information. We want to be stimulated, and we want it to have a little pop to it, and we want to be able to have some kind of, exchange to be able to go on. So, our children have to be taught a certain way, and that needs to be recognized. So yeah, homeschooling is good. It's the way. But I will say, ain't everybody equipped to homeschool their kids. That's I need to say that. Everybody is not a teacher. And even if you're intelligent, everybody's just not patient. You're just not, you may not be the type that's patient with your kids, or creative, or whatever. It's not everybody's gift. So to do some kind of we can do our own community schooling, online community schooling, Zoom schooling. There's other ways to do it. Those of you that do have gifts can make that into your own business. Ain't nobody's business what you do, but you can do it. There's a group of teachers in Atlanta that do they actually make home visits. They'll do like tutoring, supplemental education. I think that was a brilliant idea. Okay. So anything else you got, Jay?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but there's this other side of it. When I was first introduced to the public school system, you know, I said this many times, so I can't overemphasize it. As a little boy, being left there with all those strangers around, the impression I got was, what are you doing leaving me here? You know? So, and then when you really look back at the schooling you may have had, and I'm not talking about um, trivial matters, I'm talking about serious matters now. School was really a waste of my time when you find out that they only basically indoctrinated you to serve them. And you're not here to be somebody else's footstool. But that's exactly what they did. So that's why I say it was a waste of my time, because they didn't teach me the truth. They held the truth back, was the same as a lie anyway, of why we do the things we do. So when you come down to it, you have to see that actually that's a parental responsibility. It really is. I mean, you don't send a tiger cub to be raised by lions, because see, those two cats, even though they're big, they they have different abilities and they function differently. You know, you don't send somebody over to being raised by a culture slash species that's not of yours. We're different on many levels. So that's how I see that now. But back then, you get used to it, that you got to go to this school and you got to be there X amount of hours. And then they teach you whatever it is they wanted you to program you with. I hated history. Now I know why. And I hated English. Now I know why about that too. So I just figured I have to put my 2 cents on that fact. But I hear what you're saying. Not everybody can teach, but there's somebody in your family that can. So I look at it from that perspective.
That's right. So we need to kind of like share in our gifts. That's part of building back the nation. It's like sharing your gifts, and you find out, oh, this one's a massage therapist, and that one is a high school principal, and the other one is takes care of animals, a veterinarian, or a vet tech, or everybody has their gifts. So as we get together and find out who we are and reach out to our cousins and kinfolk and do our research, that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be bringing together our skill sets as well, and start by doing little projects together or doing some online projects, making actual economic builds together. That's a way to start. That's part of the process. So just open up your mind to the possibilities of you building back your inheritance can also do for you and yours, as far as economic opportunities, as well as furthering and enriching the lives of ourselves, our children, and our elders. And we will build on that a little more in the next program. We can call it a night. Does anybody else have any final words? Carrie, are you there? You got anything? Jay, any final words?
Yeah, I saw in the chat. He says you can close it out anytime you feel like it. I'm pretty done. Thanks for having me.
All right. Okay. I love it that we can get together like this, and I hopefully we'll get together again later in the week. So anybody, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. Keep moving like you're moving. You're here for a reason. We're so glad you were here with us today. Don't forget to make a comment. Don't forget to hit the like and share. We appreciate you being the most critically thinking chat on in the planet. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Good night, everyone.